Professors gleeful, absolutely gleeful as Trump contracts COVID. We knew from the beginning that COVID was the progressives' best friend, allowing governments to override our civil liberties. But now we see that all along it was their only hope to destroy the economy in the hopes of unseating Trump's presidency. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show, the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start with reaction to Trump's COVID-19 test as academia loses their mind. Now, again, I don't care. Politics is a blood sport. It doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the sanctimony of these professors, right? That they care about everything. Their hearts are so open-minded. They alone possess empathy. They're against bigotry of any kind. And we said this for a long time, we've pointed this out, that the license of progressivism is to talk about inclusivity and tolerance until you've decided somebody is not sufficiently tolerant. And then there is nobody nastier, nobody less empathetic, nobody more childish than a university professor. Why? Because they have the guarantee of tenure. As long as they're tenured, the universities will, and I've said this many times in the program, there is nothing too liberal you can say on a college campus. There's nothing too liberal. Oh, you might have to pull it down, or you might have the smart ones, the smart professors liberals who've gotten caught and yelled at or outed for saying horrible things. Do you notice how the smart ones never apologize? Because whether you apologize or not, the university is kind of backed into a corner where all they can do is we reserve the right of our professors to have free speech. It's only if you're on the right that the consequences of speaking your mind come and get you. And so in this story, the schadenfreude, the open hostility, the death threats, the gleefulness at the potential loss of the president, this is fair game for the left.
The thing that gets me with any of these stories, and especially because we're talking about the president and him contracting disease that, yes, he could die from. It is possible. Sure. The fact that immediately, without even a thought, these professors have to take to social media. They have to say something because they, in their little professorial minds, think that their opinion is to be heard. It's kind of like when we talk about how celebrities open their big mouth and we're supposed to all agree with what they say or take what they say to heart. These professors think that, well, I'm a professor, so my opinion counts more. And that's why when you look at Twitter and you see these accounts, and it's not just their name, it's I'm Professor so-and-so. And so they're using, or doctor, I put PhD in my title, that it makes it like, haha, I'm so much smarter. Case in point, we have Professor Dynarski, who says, I've been an atheist for nearly 40 years, but perhaps there is a God. And then it was tagged in the reference to the fact that Trump got
and now
COVID.
We know why the professor's an atheist, because his view of God is somebody who brutally murders your enemies just because he doesn't like them, right? So this is clearly his conception of God. I was an atheist for 40 years, and now that God apparently wants to kill Donald Trump, so the only way that our professors understand religion is Old Testament eye for an eye stuff, right?
Well, it's actually a female who posted that, but she also retweeted a bunch of things.
So
and the thing is,
Professor Dynarski is
yes,
female. Okay.
Yes, but
the fairer sex always.
You may
right?
okay. Then you may not know it because she already made her Twitter account private. Because once you do this and someone outs you, then they're like, oh, and they get scared and have to privatize. Well, they retweeted some of these other professor or just random lefties posts. So this Professor Dynarski also retweeted David Roth, who had said, whatever your politics, whatever your party or candidate, wherever you stand on one issue or the next, if you care about the United States of America and want it to flourish, you have to admit that all this S word is objectively hilarious and rules very much.
Isn't it
rules
interesting? I mean, go back to that slide for a second. This is the progressive left. They are all about denouncing moral absolutes, right? They are subjectivists. They don't believe, they're too smart to believe in black and white. But all of a sudden, they find God. We saw in the first tweet. And again, why does she hide it? I mean, what's going to happen to you? Your progressive universities are going to do nothing to you. Oh, they might say the standard boilerplate. We respect the right of our professors to have freedom of speech. We do not share but in this case, they very well might. We do not share the attitudes and opinions of this particular post. But if you go back to the slide, in the first place, she found God, right? Mm-hmm. Now she's found objectivity. This is the one thing in our postmodern world that's objectively hilarious. Donald Trump might die from COVID.
Yeah, so she's retweeting that. And just so everyone knows, her name is Susan Dynarski. She's a University of Michigan economics professor. So there's that. Just
economics.
Economics.
Yeah,
she's
no wonder
economist.
our kids are graduating from college mathematically and financially illiterate.
All right, and she also retweeted a post from the Volatile Mermaid, who had said, I was just told by some people it's wrong to be happy that the president, who said that COVID is a hoax, has... well, first off, that's inaccurate. He did not say COVID is a hoax. Go back and just listen to what he said. Anyway, COVID is a hoax, has COVID, and to them, I'd like to say from the bottom of my heart, apparently, this Volatile Mermaid has a heart. F you.
Right.
F
And again, the other thing, besides the hypocrisy of the professors, they consider themselves the queens and kings of empathy. They're tolerant, they're progressive, they're mature. They're babies, number one. They're bigoted babies. Number two, we talked about how finding God, and I realize these are sarcastic posts, but finding God and objectivity of all places here also shows what children they are. But even there, the Volatile Mermaid, the thing that gets me about her, right? Throw that one up there again, Mike. The Volatile Mermaid, right? I'd like to say from the bottom of my heart, F you. I was just told by some people it's wrong to be happy that the president, this hoax business. This idea, they're repeating the same lies about Charlottesville. I mean, everything literally the left says about Donald Trump is demonstrably disprovable, but you're not going to change the minds of these people. So the idea here that this is some kind of an act of bravery, this speaking truth to power. No, you're not. You're not speaking truth to power because you're speaking lies. You're not speaking it to power because you already aren't harassed in the least by Donald Trump. He has no control over your life. He doesn't infringe upon your tenure. He doesn't do anything that's going to hurt you personally. So you are really not speaking truth to power. Let's just pretend. Let's stop pretending that that's what we're doing here.
And there's one tweet that I guess if you took a very, very, very surface level, you could think, oh, he's actually a little sad that Trump got COVID. But then if you actually read the whole sentence and compute it, you're like, oh, no. Louisiana Tech professor Drew McKevitt tweeted, I thought we had all agreed we wanted to see him die in prison.
Yes.
That's
keep him alive so we can kill him.
So
and that was
die in prison.
That was a lot of the Hollywood reaction, too. I want to see him, some African-American singer, I can't even think of her name, I'd never heard of her before, came out and said something to the effect of, please get better, you racist son of a bee, so we can vote you out of office, I guess. There you go. So I suppose that's even more honest than the college professors. Well, we hope you get better so we can vote you out of office.
That's exactly it. But then if you wanted even another example of a professor, we have a University of Pennsylvania professor and Catholics for Biden co-chair.
Well, there you go.
Anthea Butler asked if it was too late to open a bottle of champagne.
Yes.
Okay, well, other than what's happening with President Trump and COVID on the local home front, more back into the school system itself, we have a story from Madison, Wisconsin, where the Madison Metropolitan School District parents found out that their school district could not intentionally hide from parents information regarding their children's chosen gender identities in schools. And this came after the Dane County Judge Frank Remington issued a temporary, that's the key word there, temporary injunction against a portion of the MMSD guidance in question. So basically what happened is back in February, parents had disputed a guidance that was put forward by the district all the way back actually in April 2018. So they're just kind of digging into it now and seeing it. And that guidance is advising that faculty and staff members assist students in their gender transitions at school without, not doing it, notifying their parents. And so once this kind of was figured out by parents, a group of parents got together, and the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, WILL, and the Alliance Defending Freedom, on behalf of this anonymous group of parents, said, or there are also parents who have kids actually enrolled in the school, so it's not just an outside group, it's like actual parents with kids in the school, They filed suit alleging that an informal guidance, while not an officially adopted district policy, actually encourages employees to actively deceive parents about their children's gender-based decisions, and that it's a violation of parental rights as well as religious rights. That's what they're arguing.
We are really fortunate here in Wisconsin that we have WILL, the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They've been great. I've had dealings with them. I'm going to have upcoming again more dealings with them.
Woo!
It's coming soon.
Coming soon. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned.
What's wonderful about them is that they will take your case on a pro bono, right?
Even better.
They're an organization whose job it is they have the resources to help people who find themselves on the wrong end of educational issues through faculty, through staff, administrators. So they're great. And again, it's a temporary injunction. But this is the kind of thing that shows you how dysfunctional as a country we've become. How sordid and accustomed to allowing complete strangers educate our kids, even if those complete strangers have worldviews that are radically opposed to ours. That a school can look you in the eye as a public school and conclude that we have the right to coerce your kids into questioning their own gender, to teaching your children that gender doesn't mean anything, and to encourage your kids to reject the gender they were born into, to adopt any number of made-up genders, and to tell you nothing about this, to let all of this happen without you knowing anything about that. That's the kind of thing that if we were a sane society, I don't care what issue it is. It could be anything. If you're teaching kids any moral position, you're abandoning your job to teach kids actual stuff, and you're helping them transition into whatever it is you want to help them transition into. And whenever this comes up, you will not talk to parents about it. You will keep these kids secret, however young. This is one of those lines that has been crossed, that unless we pull that line back real quick, and maybe this injunction will turn into something more serious, then the public schools are actively working against parents. They have nothing to do on the side of parents.
Yeah, and I don't know when this actually happened, but it's just kind of devolved over the evolution here of time with our society. But the fact that you've gone from seeking permission to do anything before you do it to now what they're doing, and the left is smart in doing this, they're just going to do whatever they want and ask for forgiveness, but they won't actually ask for forgiveness later. They're just going to put it forth, and then obviously April 2018, it's taken like a couple years here for this to even, what's happening? Oh, and now we want to file suit. And they've gone this whole time without it. And here's where it gets interesting is the leaders from the Masson School District have rejected the plaintiff's premise. Tim Lamont says he's a spokesperson for the district, reiterated the guidance. It's not official. So this is their loophole. This is what they're trying to do. Well, it's not official. And they say that the faculty and staff prioritize working in collaboration with families to support our students, and it's always our preferred method of support. See how wishy-washy all of that is? So they can get away with doing all this, and they're going to have to wait for actual people who care about their kids in their schools to take action, because otherwise it's just going to keep going down that hole, and they don't care. They don't care what happens, as seen by Tim Lamont.
Yeah, I like your premise that this is the typical, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. But as you pointed out, they're not asking for forgiveness.
They're just going to go down that.
When you hit the wall, they're going to use your taxpayer dollars that you paid into the school to sue you. All right, or to defend themselves from being sued by you in court. You're paying for the public school to defend itself from parents. Parents are paying for public schools to defend themselves from the lawsuit brought by parents.
And then if you want to flip it to the other side, if they're saying it's not official policy, so that makes it okay, then you could do that with anything.
Right.
The staff, what is it? What did they say? The faculty and staff prioritize working in collaboration with families to support our students. Well, what are we going to support them with? Let's support them with prayer in school. Let's support them with having Bible groups in.
Right.
Could we support them with anything else? With
we're bringing right-wing conservative Christians into your elementary school classrooms, spending hours a day indoctrinating them into Orthodox Christianity, but it's not required.
It's not official, so that makes it okay, right?
We also told the kids not to tell their parents. We have a strict policy of not telling the parents when these kids become evangelical Christians.
You know what? I don't buy your premise. So we've recently been talking about what's happening in Connecticut schools in terms of in the high school with transgenders and, basically males in female sports and what they're doing about it. And Betsy DeVos saying that, maybe we're going to withhold federal funding. Well, now we got the federal government involved in the legislature, where we have senators who are also defending women and women's sports and their ability to actually participate in a female sport the way it was meant to be participated in. So we have Senate Republicans, because if you get a Senate Democrat on this, I will be shocked. So Senate Republicans have introduced a bill, and it would, basically, it would cover the entire nation, not just Connecticut anymore. And it would withhold federal funding to the schools that allow transgender children to compete in a sport that is not their gender at birth. And mostly, again, we're talking boys going into female sports. It's very rare for the female to go into the male sport. So I like this comment from Senator Kelly Loeffler, who's sponsored with it. She's a Republican from Georgia. She said actually in a statement that Title IX established a fair and equal chance for women and girls to compete, and sports should be no exception. As someone who learned invaluable life lessons and built confidence playing sports throughout my life, I'm proud to lead this legislation to ensure girls of all ages can enjoy those same opportunities. So good on Kelly to say that. Also sponsoring this is James Langford from Oklahoma, Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, Tom Cotton from Arkansas, and Mike Lee from Utah. And they introduced the bill. It's called Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2020. Now, to me, that sounds pretty self-explanatory right there. And it's obviously necessary in the nation today.
Your very first sentence completely destructed the left-wing premise of the transgender warriors. Your first sentence, the very first thing you said, completely undercut what the trans people are telling you. It's almost always, almost exclusively, boys who pretend they're women who play women's sports. It almost never happens, if it ever happens at all, that a female who transitions to a boy plays sports with the boys. Why?
If I remember biology anatomy class, I think it has something to do with their genes and this testosterone thing they have going on in there.
That you can't, generally speaking, you can't take a woman who wants to be a man and make her to compete with the men. You just can't. Even with all of that outside artificial meddling and all of that the hormones you pump them with, generally speaking, you can't do it. This tells you something.
Unless we're talking about dance, specifically ribbon dancing. And I think in that case, the woman going to the man competing on the male ribbon dancing team might have an edge. I'm not certain on that, though. Maybe you can transition and let me know.
I have not ribbon danced, but if that's your go-to argument, that the ribbon dancers might be the exception, I let that stand as the exception that proves the rule. And this is a serious thing, right? I mean, you have young women who think they're men. They don't play sports because they can't compete, even with the biological help. Generally speaking, you almost never see that. On the other hand, however, that's right. You allow boys who can't compete with other boys to engage in this gender revisioning. Suddenly they're dominating and they're winning trophies. So it's good to see that senators are taking this seriously. Again, you need both houses of Congress to get this through. So the bottom line is that we've got to find a way to we're being very progressive, aren't we, Katie?
Yeah.
Well, progressive as of 20 years ago. We want to see women
turn of the century.
Women to have the rights to compete against other women. We want women. We are being highly feminist. Well, second wave feminist, right?
Second wave, yeah. Not third
We're being
wave,
highly second wave feminist right now, and we got to give a shout out to the J.K. Rowlings of the world, right? As annoying and annoyingly political and simple-minded as she is at times, the fact is that she's got this right.
She's still got a brain
right.
Up there for that.
You are not supporting women when you allow men who pretend to be women to take away their perks and their prerogatives.
And I just want to get this statement out from Senator Tom Cotton because I believe it was a good statement on his behalf. He said, "At their best, sports teach our kids fundamental lessons about fairness and integrity in a safe environment. But there's nothing fair, honest, or safe about allowing men to compete in sports leagues designed solely for women. This bill will preserve the sports leagues and teams that allow women and girls to excel as athletes, and it will defend the common sense principle that women's sports are for women. It's tragic but unsurprising that such a defense is necessary." And
these ridiculous left-wing social justice warriors, if they really meant what they said, they would be lobbying the NBA, who's in its full woke mode, right?
Jeez.
To voluntarily take one female basketball player on every team. Do it. Take one. We've already forced coaches on them, right? Female coaches. Require the NBA to have at least one female basketball player because you're giving a woman a chance to make a salary she could never make on a women's team.
Here's the thing: no one watches the NBA anymore, as evidenced by what's happened in the finals. So
Did you see
that's
LeBron?
Its own justice.
Did you see LeBron?
No, because I'm not watching them.
I don't watch it either. But he as they were getting beat yesterday, he walked off the court with 10 seconds to play. He would not stand on the court and lose gracefully. Why does that not surprise me?
It's time for some real education. The tribute money is a fresco by Italian master Masaccio located in the Brancacci Chapel of the Basilica of Santa Maria del Carmine in Florence. Painted in the 1420s, it's considered to be one of Masaccio's best paintings and a key work of art in the development of Renaissance art.
Take a look at the picture while I give you some background on it. This is the Brancacci Chapel. It's a beautiful, relatively small chapel in Rome where if you enter it, you will see that almost every piece of wall space has been frescoed. Fresco is when you take wet plaster, you just plaster a wall freshly, so the plaster is still damp, and then you paint in these beautiful colors onto the wet plaster, and you watch as the plaster just absorbs the color. Really quite beautiful. The Last Supper by Da Vinci is this kind of a painting, a plaster painting. The problem with frescoes is as the older the building gets, the more the paint fades, the more the plaster begins to crumble. So it's fairly ephemeral as an art form, but go back to the picture here. This is the tribute money in the Brancacci Chapel, which was done by Masaccio and another artist by the name of Masolino. It's all dedicated to St. Peter. The tribute money is one of many frescoes painted by Masaccio and Masolino in the Brancacci Chapel in Santa Maria della Carmine in Florence. I'm sorry, I think I mentioned Rome before. It's Florence. When you walk into the chapel, the fresco is on your upper left. All the frescoes in the chapel tell the life of St. Peter. The story of the tribute money is told in 3 separate scenes, all in the same picture, in the same fresco. This way of telling an entire story is one painting is called a continuous narrative in painting. And there you have, at the center, you see Christ, right? He's got the pinkish tunic with the blue wrap around him in the tribute money. A Roman tax collector, the figure in the foreground in the short orange tunic and no halo, demands tax money from Christ and the 12 apostles who do not have the money to pay. Christ in the center is wearing a pinkish robe, gathered at the waist with a blue toga-like wrap. He points to the left and says to St. Peter, "So that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin." You can see on the far left side there's St. Peter who goes fishing. He casts his line and he catches a fish. And in the belly of the fish is the tax money. All right? In the center of the fresco, we see the tax collector demanding money, Christ and Peter. On the far left, scene 2, we see Peter kneeling down and retrieving the money from the mouth of the fish. And on the far right, so all these things are happening in real time, right? In real time, the tax collector in orange is demanding money of the apostles and Christ. In real time, Peter has cast his line and caught the fish. And then you've got the third scene. Right? We see Peter kneeling down on the left. On the far right, St. Peter pays the tax collector. In the fresco, the tax collector appears twice. St. Peter appears 3 times. You can find them easily if you look at their clothing. So this is really kind of a beautiful picture. Go to the last image, Mike. One of the things that happened at this period, the early 15th century, the early 1400s, huge developments in perspective, in ways of painting pictures that gave depth and texture to a canvas. Look at how beautifully the buildings behind the gathering of people, the mountains in the distance, the sea and the clouds beyond that create levels of depth. And those lines there, those vanishing lines that come from Christ, show you that from whatever perspective you come to this painting, whether you're standing on the second floor of the building, whether you are off to the right, that everything here sort of draws your attention to the center of the picture, all the sight lines, and that would, of course, be the face of the Savior.
All right, just as a reminder, these premier beverage vessels of freedom are available when you join our Patriot Club with a one-time $99 tax-deductible donation. Your gift literally keeps the show going as Facebook and YouTube have demonetized our content. So to get started and sign up, all you have to do is go to patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. Apparently, the going rate now for a kid who loses a tooth is $3.70. That's what the average is at. I am shocked at that one as well. $3.70, one tooth.
And that's our show today. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.